for the invitation. As Cassie said, I am the first half of the presentation. So work as an assistant professor at Iowa State, and then I've been here for about 5 years. And before coming here, I worked at the Iowa Flood Center for about 10 years. So today I'm going to be talking about a project that was developed as a collaboration between the University of Iowa and Iowa State with money from the Iowa Highway Research Board. And just to set the stage, I typically start with a map like this when I talk about flooding, which is the main topic of today. A presidential disaster declaration is an action taken by the President of the United States when a natural disaster or an emergency exceeds the capacity of a state or a local jurisdiction to respond. And this map here shows the number of times that the President of the United States has declared a disaster for counties in Iowa between 1989 and 2022. As you can see here, there is a high number of times over those 30 years when major events have happened related to flooding that have impacted the state. Maybe one of the take-home messages, if you ask me, from this map is that no county has escaped being impacted by catastrophic events, and all of them have at least a couple of presidential disaster declarations, and certainly Northeast Iowa stands out as the place where the highest number of presidential disaster declarations because of flooding. So in talking about the basics, so a culvert, which is obviously one of the main topics of today's presentation. Culverts is the structure that we in the water resources world build to allow water to move from one side of the road to the other. And here you're looking at kind of standard design culverts that do not consider the potential of these particular structures to provide some flood attenuation. So today's presentation is not about this type of structure that you are looking at here in the picture. Today's presentation is about this type of structure that it is also located at the intersection of a waterway and a roadway. So where the culvert would be, we call them on-road structures. And the main idea of an on-road structure is that a culvert is modified in such a way that it's not that easy for water to pass under the road. The road embankment is used as a dam, and the fact that water is being held back temporarily can provide some reduction benefits. So in this particular picture, if you look at the left-hand side, for example, water that moves towards the road has two ways to continue moving downstream and to pass to the other side of the road. One would be through the pipe at the bottom, which is relatively small, at least if you think about traditional designs. And then at some point, there's a riser pipe that is activated if the water gets high enough. So more pictures here. We have the traditional structure that I was talking about in the upper left. We have the on-road structure or modified culvert, if you want, that is on the lower left. And then on the right-hand side, this is a picture that was shared with me of an on-road structure actually functioning. So this is an on-road structure that was built in Northeast Iowa. And the person who took this picture was lucky enough to capture the on-road structure soon after a heavy precipitation event, and you see all that water retained at the upstream end of the structure, and that not temporary pool will dissipate in something approximately to 24 hours or so. So the whole project that I'm going to be talking about today is about this type of modified structure. And just an schematic, just to make sure that everybody understands what I'm talking about. So this is an schematic of an actually built on-road structure located in Otter Creek in Fayette County in Northeast Iowa that shows the constrained pipe at the bottom, shows the riser pipe, and shows how the existing culvert is still in place. And the whole expectation is that the amount of water that is being retained by this structure temporarily can provide flood reduction benefits at a downstream location. So as I already mentioned, the information that I am going to be presenting today is about a 3-year project that was funded by Iowa DOT, by the Iowa Highway Research Board. Began in 2021, and we completed this project in 2024. And the project has 3 main elements. So the first element is, as you can see here in the slide, It's a statewide GIS analysis. So our research team went over each one of the HOC 12 watersheds in the state of Iowa and identify locations where culverts could be transformed into on-road structures. So that's available for Iowa's 99 counties. And in addition to that, making some assumptions, some calculations were made as to how much water can be stored behind each one of those structures and how much volume, or how large the pool behind those structures is and how much water volume can be stored behind those structures. The second component of the project was related with hydrologic modeling, and that modeling, and I have some slides to show you later on, was done at the structure level, so at the culvert level, if you want, and also at a HOC 12 level as well. And the third major component of the project was the development of a web platform to allow the public to visualize and use, hopefully, the results of this particular project. So about the statewide GIS analysis, so it was based on, for the most part, on LiDAR, on elevation data. The other geospatial data sets were considered. And here, in this particular slide, I'm showing you the typical flow of information that was taken care of by the GIS group of this project. So the step number one was the identification of a potential culvert, so a simple intersection between a waterway and a roadway. And once that particular culvert was identified, the assumption of the implementation of an on-road structure was considered in the GIS analysis, assuming that the riser pipe has 3 different elevations: 50% of the road, 75% of the road, and 90% of the road elevation. And that's why you see, for example, in the panel number 4, 3 different pools, assuming that the on-road structure was implemented at that location. And for those pools, this project calculated not only the area, but the actual volume that can be stored behind the structure. So this particular analysis was completed across 250,000 structures throughout the state of Iowa. And here I have a summary of the results, presenting information about number of on-road structures that were identified by the GIS analysis, the amount of water, the volume in acre feet that were calculated using the LiDAR data, how large the pools were, and this in the lower left panel, and also the area that drains to the particular identified culvert or on-road structure. So patterns that emerge from presenting the data aggregated at the HOC 12, as it is here in this particular map. You see that the structures with the largest storage appear for the most part in the Des Moines Lobe, and in some places near the Missouri River as well. The same applies for the pool area. We also see that the pools areas identified in the Des Moines Lobe tend to be larger than other places in the state, and that might perhaps make some of the structures identified not desirable, I guess, for landowners, because typically areas that are temporarily inundated by this structure are located in private lands. Not all of them, but most of them. So I have here the results aggregated at the HOC 12, and here I present the same information. It's exactly the same information, but aggregated at the county level, and of course the story is fundamentally the same. We have the same patterns identified in the Des Moines Lobe and near the Missouri River as well. So this information is perhaps not that useful for someone interested in deciding whether or not to implement a on-road structure at a particular location. It's more like perhaps for planning purposes, or someone who wants to take a view of how this particular practice can be implemented in different counties across the state. But that's basically what I want to say about the statewide GIS-based analysis. And now moving on to the hydrologic, the H&H modeling. What we did as the second item for this particular project was an analysis, H&H, so basically hydrology and hydraulic analysis of each one of the individual structures. So however, we couldn't do that in a 3-year project for all the 250,000 structures identified through the statewide GIS analysis. We did that only for selected HOC 12s. And what we did here for these structures and under the hydrologic design analysis was to come up with a planning designs of the structures identified, like I said, only for selected Hot 12s, at least in the first phase of this project. And we ran classic H&H runoff generation analysis and storm-based analysis to determine the dimensions, diameters of the different outlets of a generic rock structure, as you can see here in the picture. And that information was generated by our research group here, and as a test of how well our designs that were coded by our students here at Iowa State, our designs represent or replicate on-road structures that were actually built and designed by engineering companies. We selected a couple of existing on-road structures, and this one is, I think, particularly located in Otter Creek in northeast Iowa. And here on the right-hand side, you see the hydrographs that represent the flow values associated with a existing culvert, which is the blue line, versus the red line associated with the hydrograph with the on-road structure in place. And you see here how close, it's not a perfect match, but how close both the blue and the red hydrograph here on the right-hand side compare with the hydrographs that are presented here. These are taken from designs that were developed by a consulting engineering company in Fayette County. And what we were trying to demonstrate here is that the routines and the scripts that we develop in this research project are able to replicate to some extent what a consulting engineering company would do when it comes to actual designing this particular on-road structure. And once we have these scripts tested and validated, if you want, we apply it in selected HOC 12, as I said. And then the second part of the hydrologic component of this particular project was to analyze how not only one structure, but a system of several on-road structures located in the headwater catchments of a particular watershed, in this case, this is Bear Creek in northeast Iowa, would benefit or would alleviate flood-related impacts, not at the structure location, but at some point downstream at the HOC 12 level. For that, we use modeling as well. In this case, we ran a 50-year storm analysis. And you can see here on the right-hand side how the red line, which represents the hydrograph and the amount of flow that was predicted by the model without the on-road structures in place, compares against the blue line, which is the hydrograph predicted after 56 on-road structures were implemented in the model. You see how for the 50-year storm, which is the hydrograph that you are looking at here, the system of 56 on-road structures generate a reduction of something in the order of 25% for the 50-year storm. So that is as far as hydrologic modeling. And then the third component of this particular project was the development of this particular web platform that was developed at the University of Iowa. And for that, I think I can show you a little bit for those of you who are not familiar with this platform, how this platform works. So, Cassie, are you seeing right now my web browser?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the Iowa On-Road Structures Information Platform. And what you can find here is basically the information that I tried to describe in the previous slides. So we have the statewide GIS analysis available for every single place in the state. So 99 counties have that information. And the counties that were selected for detailed hydrologic analysis are presented here in blue. So for example, if I take you here to Fayette County, and if I navigate to one HOC 12 where that on-road structure that we use for validation purposes is located, you can find here information about the locations of the potential on-road structures, which is the green dots. And in addition to that, you can find the pool area that is predicted by the GIS analysis, assuming that the on-road structure has a riser pipe that is equivalent to 75% of the road elevation. And then if you go ahead and click in each one of the pools, you have some information about how large the area that drains to this particular on-road structure is, how large, 4.1 acres, the pool itself is. And in addition to that, you can find some information about how much volume, in this case, 15.4 acre feet of water can be stored if this particular location were to be transformed into an on-road structure. So, and of course, the same can be done for each one of the 250,000 about locations that were identified. So this is the information that is available for every single county and every single Hub 12 in the state. So if I navigate to another one, a very large one here, for example, we have here a catchment area of almost 900 acres, which is represented here by the red line, a pool area of 26 acres, and a total storage of about 100 acre feet here. So that is information available anywhere in the state. And if I want to give you some idea about what information is available at the detail level for the Hub 12, for which we developed a detailed hydrologic analysis. So you will identify the watershed that was selected because it has this thick blue boundary here. And if we click, you will see that for some structures, there is information about not only how much water can be stored behind the dam and how large the pool is, but some hydrologic results. So for example, if I click on this, this is the hydrograph. The green will be the flow predicted by our modeling without doing any transformation to on-road structure. In this case, you are looking at results for the 100-year flood. And the blue line here shows the hydrograph predicted by the model if that particular culvert where I clicked were to be transformed into an on-road structure. So different return periods were tested here in our analysis. And that is what is available, as I said, for some selected watersheds. So if I go to another place of the state where we perform this detailed analysis, so see, click on this one, for example. This is another watershed or another on-road structure that shows significant benefits. In this case, for the 50-year storm, you see that there is a significant reduction with the peak flow associated with the traditional culvert, if you want, represented by the green line, almost 350 CFS, versus the blue line that shows a peak flow of only 13 or 14 CFS if this particular location were to be transformed into an on-road structure. So that's the level of information that was generated by our technical team. So we are in conversations, in advanced conversations, I'd say, about how to continue doing this research. And one of the goals of our research team is to complete this detailed level of analysis, the H&H that I just presented you, not only for those selected Hub 12, but for the entire state. And Lee will talk now more about how the project, the genesis of the project and how we started working on this project and some other information about what our future plans are. So Lee, please take it away.
Thank you, Antonio. Just a little background for me. I came from the county engineering side of things. My research or my background is not in conservation practice or anything like that. I am a civil engineer. That's what I dealt with. I built roads and bridges, and how I fell into this is, as Antonio had showed in his slides, the Bear Creek watershed, which is in Winnebago County where I live, had a lot of these type of structures in. Most of them are on private property, but when we had our '08 floods, I saw a difference and never knew how to quantify it. And that's kind of how I got introduced to Antonio and how things started to take off with the Flood Center and this research project. So again, this will be more from a county engineer standpoint than anything else. Next slide. Well, I hope I can remember the order. Oh, well, why am I going to discuss this? Because flooding sucks. If you may have to try to keep up with me, Antonio, because this thing's going to have a lot of stuff in it. But this is how to mitigate the flooding. These photos are all from the '08 flooding events, and this is what we're trying to avoid. And that's how I really looked at this project is how do we stop this from happening and ruining lives and infrastructure and things like that. Next slide. Flooding sucks. Again, all these photographs are from the '08 flooding. And this is the infrastructure we lost and we had to replace it. And that's expensive. And we needed to come up with some way to slow this water down. Next slide. More of the same. When you have the flooding, this is what you deal with. Next slide. So TR 792, which is the project of the on-road structures, is a tool that, as Antonio showed you, lets a county engineer or state engineer or a consulting engineer go look at the state where there's a road crossing that, we've got a pipe that maybe we need to replace. Can we build one of these structures to slow water down and potentially help ourselves with flooding? We're not talking permanent pool. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that's a good idea anywhere. Like I said, I've seen in Bear Creek, we have 30 of these structures. I think it's 35 actually. But I would say 6 of them are on road, the rest of them are on private property. And 15% of that watershed goes through one of these structures before it leaves Bear Creek. And you absolutely notice that they're there when you get a flooding event. Next, there's Bear Creek. Um, that's the 5 structures that we have that are on the road. Next. This is probably my favorite example of it. That's the before and after of the bridge that was there and then the structure we put in afterwards. You can see now, again, I'm looking at this from an engineering standpoint. That bridge is narrow. It's got a weight limit to it. Implements of husbandry today are heavy and wide. They don't like that bridge at all. You can see there's a little wiggle in the road there. Every time you have a wiggle in the road, that's just one more opportunity for a car to just leave the roadway, which is the number one crash on our rural roads, is single vehicles just leaving the roadway. So to put these structures in, I'm fixing all of these problems. I'm not even beginning to get into the conservation part of it where all those benefits come to play. And you guys know all those. I'm not going to try to baffle you or with all of that stuff. Um, but I straightened the road. I removed a choke point. I made a much safer roadway, and I slowed this water down. That bottom right picture, that's not what we normally do. That's the inlet. The landowner, when we got done with our project, told us you guys messed up the inlet, and so he went in and fixed it for us. And there it is fixed, and it's just going to stay that way because that's their property. Next, the more detailed pictures of it, you can see the inlet, the trash collector you have on the drop inlet. Um, you really need that because especially where we are, you can see there's a lot of timber in the area. If you get anything wedged into that pipe, your life is going to be miserable. So that's just kind of some of the details of what it looks like when we're done. Next. Another one we did, this one was actually paid for by HUD. They found out that we were putting these structures in, and this stream actually runs north in through the city of Decorah. And this is very high in the watershed, which is where these are ideally built. But um, you can see what it looked like before. Again, it was an old bridge that wasn't in the best of shape. This alignment's not near as bad. The bridge is a little wider, but now you can see it at the end. Our slopes are better, and we actually got a picture where you can see there's water in it. We haven't even got it seeded yet, and it's doing its job. So next. Again, there it is. That's it doing its job, collecting that water and slowing it down. And then the right picture is just the outlet, and you can see how the water's running through that outlet versus what it's doing upstream. Next. All right, these should start there. Yep, that's the outlet. This one's actually on private property. The landowner sent me these videos just because he really likes what was done and he heard we were trying to promote these. But so this one technically is on private property, but it works exactly the same way. You can see that outlet, that water's coming out. There's not a lot of violence there. There's not a lot of power to it. It's just flowing out. And then you can see the upstream. The water is still flowing into the structure, but it's being controlled, it's being held, and basically reducing the damage from the downstream perspective. Next. I don't know if you, there you go. So again, from an engineering perspective, the whole idea is to slow your Q values. You get less damage to infrastructure. You have lower velocities, you get less scour and erosion and sediment loss. And one of the things I really looked at is, when you have a stream that flows eventually into a community, what are you doing for that community way downstream when we have these flood events? It improves our vertical and horizontal geometry, which makes the road safer for the traveling public. It has a better cross section. Again, all the conservation benefits. It does create a public-private partnership because you have to get the landowners to buy into it. I can condemn to put in a box culvert or a new bridge, but I cannot condemn to store water on someone's property. You've got to get them to come with you on the project. And that will almost always be your biggest headache, is to try to get the landowner involved. And my experience with these is they are typically going to be more expensive than if you took the existing structure out and just put in one that the hydraulics said you should put in. And it's not always the case, but 9 times out of 10, it will be a more expensive structure. All right, next. June 8th, we can kind of go through this. This is again how I got started on this project. I was kind of the big push to get this through the research board. If any of you know Laura Priest, she was someone I talked to quite a bit about things like this, and she got me set up at the Flood Center. We met, we talked about designing this tool. How do we fund it? Let's try the research board. It worked, and that's what we went with. Next slide. For those of you who are not familiar with the Iowa Highway Research Board, it is made up of 6 county engineers, 2 city engineers, 4 engineers from the DOT, and the chair of the civil engineering department from Iowa State University and the University of Iowa. There's also a TRB representative, and that just happens to also be a county engineer. So when you look at the makeup of it, the counties have a huge voice in what projects go through. And quite honestly, that's why this project made it through. When you want a project, you can submit it. Anyone can do it. You can do it yourself if you've got a project that you think the Iowa Highway Research Board would be interested in. It's on the Research and Analytics website under the Ideas tabs. And if you've got an idea, stick it in there. It may go through, it may not. There's a lot of projects that don't go through, but there's a lot that do. Once it's been submitted, it goes to a bunch of different reviews. And when it comes out of those reviews, the research board says, yep, we're going to fund it. Then it goes to an RFP, and people like Antonio say, hey, I want to do this, and they get funded to do it. So next slide. Once we started this, these are a lot of the people that got involved in talking to us about it. It's now been asked about in other states, and I've traveled to a couple states now to give a similar presentation of this as to what we did and how we did it, and hopefully they'll get traction in other states, hopefully nationwide, because flooding is everybody's problem. But um, yeah, this is a lot of who's been involved. Next slide. We've talked about phase one. Phase two is, as Antonio said, to complete the Huck 12 watersheds that have not been done, and that's a lot of them. And then we'd have to update the website so all of that information becomes available. They have been awarded stick funding, which will get some of this work done in the northwest part of the state because of the recent floodings they've had up there. And we need to get a lot of engineers used to doing this, because one of the big things that engineers are taught when you're putting a structure in is do not create backwater. And that's exactly what we want to do here, is we're going to create backwater. And you have to break that mentality, and it's sometimes a little tougher than you think. We do have other phases and ideas of this thing. When we talk about this research, it's almost limitless the things we come up with that we could use this for. But I don't, some of this I can't wrap my head around it, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room, so that's not saying a lot. But uh, there's just so many interesting things that we can maybe solve, or at least get a better understanding of, just by this research. I did tell you these things are kind of expensive. I did put these numbers out, I'd say 4 years ago, about 550,000 on average to put one of these structures in. And the '08 flood cost the state of Iowa $10 billion. I got that from the Des Moines Register. I don't know how accurate that number is, but that was the only place I could find a real number that someone would say this is what was spent. And you do a little math there, that's a little over 1,800 of these structures we could have built with that $10 billion. The reason that seemed interesting to me is if we put all 1,800 of these in the Cedar River watershed up above the city of Cedar Falls, next slide, how would that picture look different? And to me, that I would love to know that. Antonio can give us the numbers with his brainchild that they've come up with here, but I would love to have known what that picture would look like with all these structures in place. Next slide. So my end of this is always the same. If you've got a structure like this that looks like your average everyday crossroad pipe, and it needs to come out for whatever reason, or you just want to put a structure like this, and consider these. They will not work everywhere. There are so many things that have to come to play to get them in. But if you can get them in, they make a difference, and it doesn't matter their size. So I hope if when you talk to whoever you guys talk to for your engineering firms, whether it's the county, the state, or consultants, keep this thought in their head, because hopefully they can use it and really make everybody's life better. So next slide. I think that's the last one. Oh yeah. That's all I got.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you, for that really interesting presentation. And what a cool resource that you guys have developed. We do have a few questions in the chat. If anyone else has questions, please type them now so that we can get them answered. Let's see. Becky said, this is great. Thank you. Rob said, have on-road structures been installed without a road improvement project? Can the existing culvert be retrofitted?
To my knowledge, I do not know of a structure that was put in without improvements to the roadway. Quite honestly, from an engineering standpoint, once you're in there and you're making any improvements, you have to look at, what is my design? What is my, as a county engineer, I'm looking at the roadway. How am I improving the roadway? I'm not really looking at the drawdown structure first. It is a piece of the puzzle that I'm going to use to improve my roadway. I want to look at my my slopes on my roads. I want to look at my vertical and horizontal alignment. I want to know what my cross section is. I want to know what my widths are. So, if can I meet people on this road? All of those things that are just drivers safety improvements. These structures inherently just do that. So, the short answer, I don't know of one that's ever been done without improvements to the roadway. And in all honesty, I don't know why you would do it any other way. You're there, improve it all.
All right, thank you. Elliot asked, can you talk a little about how you prevent clogging? Is there a minimum diameter for the pipes or orifices in the on-road structures that is recommended?
The hydraulics are going to kind of drive it. And when you look at what Antonio, and he can speak to this better than I can, when the program runs through its calculations, it's going to find those pipe sizes for you and tell you what they are. You just can't take them verbatim. I mean, you're going to have to go back in and make sure that you do have it truly sized right. There's a few things we found in the program that, it works, but when you get into the real world, pipe sizes jump by increments of 6 inches. You go 18, 24, 30, 36, 42. So you're not going to put in a 28-inch pipe. You're either going to put in a 24 or a 30. So there's things like that we have to kind of clean up with the program, which is, just something we have to do. But it will give you these sizes, and you just have to, more or less double check, make sure that they really are working. And absolutely every site is going to be completely independent of anything else. It is its own site. It doesn't matter what you did anywhere else. This one is specific to itself and only itself. And that's what you're going to work with.
And just to add to what Lee just said, so the way we view our planning designs, and that's how we call them that way, is basically the starting point for someone who is seriously considering the implementation of an on-road structure. So we are not trying to replace the work of a consulting engineering company, an actual analysis that include clogging and those kind of details. So, but what we are trying to do in the phase one, just for selected HAC 12s, hopefully in the second phase for the entire state, is a quick way for anybody to check, is this particular on-road structure effective from the flood reduction perspective? And that's basically what we accomplished so far.
All right, thank you. Evo said, part of the challenge is getting the permits, particularly once you get into perennial streams. Can you highlight how you've managed the permitting, particularly to minimize stream impact?
There's really no nice way to get through that. You're going to go through permitting the exact same way as if you put this structure in or just replacing, 54-inch pipe with a new 54-inch pipe. If you're impacting anything for any reason, you're going to have to get the appropriate permits, and that's going to create obstacles. I personally, and we've built, I'd say 6 or 7 of these, at least in my time. No more than that, probably 10. And we've never had one stopped because of permitting. We've had to probably do more work than we wanted to, but we've never had one stopped. The only time we've ever had to stop and abandon this design was a landowner just didn't want to go with it for whatever their reasons were.
Okay. Tom said, Lee said a lot of places these practices can't be installed. If it's on the flood center map, does that mean it can be installed, or is it just suggested pool areas of potential culverts? And then also, what are some of the parameters that would prevent an on-road structure?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say about the map. So as I mentioned in the presentation, so there were two levels of analysis that were completed during the phase one of this particular project. So if it is in the Iowa Flood Center website in the map, it only tells you if this particular structure were to be converted to an on-road structure, this will be the pool area and the amount of water that can be stored behind. So that's available for the 99 counties. And then after that, an additional level of detail was added for selected HOC 12, in which the hydrology and the hydraulics were included. So I don't know exactly if the question is only about the GIS part. So I would say if you are looking at results from our project that are based on GIS only, that is an indication that potentially a on-road structure should be considered. But I would say that the hydrology is needed to actually decide if it is worth exploring the structure. So our plan is, as it was mentioned already during this presentation, to find the funding to complete H&H, so hydrographs for every single on-road structure identified. Something that we've found out just for the 5 or 6 HOC 12, for which we did detailed analysis, was that not all the structures made sense from the hydrologic standpoint, even if they were identified as viable from the GIS only standpoint. So there are those two levels of information that are available through the website.
Just to add a little bit to that, it kind of goes back to if you go to the website, Antonio talked about that's at 75% of the road height, and that's existing. That's what's there. If you're going to change it, more than likely you're going to be increasing that road height. I don't know of any situation where we ever decreased it. That will always help you, but it is going to create issues where your right-of-way needs are going to go up, your potential impacts to whether it's environmental or maybe there's buildings around there that now you're kind of encroaching on that. We had one where the property was in set aside, and we had to work through with NRC, not NRCS. I'm drawing a blank.
FSA.
Thank you. Oh, why could I not come up with that? Where we had to work with them to recalculate everything, and there was a financial impact, and the landowner was thrilled to still do it, but we had to work through that. And it may have been a stalling point when they realize their check's going to get smaller and they don't want that. But from a design standpoint, there is engineering of all types that when you get done with the design, it may just not be cost effective to put it in. And the last thing you want to do is do it halfway and create a situation where you have overtopping or you get velocities that you are going through your structure that downstream you're having a hard time now with erosion because it's just coming through there so quickly. And like I said, each one is their own, and you're just going to have to deal with whatever it comes up with when you go through the design. And like I said, I've never been stopped by building one, but there were instances where we thought we might be.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for our speakers?
Hey, Cassie, I just wanted to add just a note. Lynn County Conservation and Lynn County Sustainability Department has been using this resource to identify potential areas within their area to implement on-road structures. So they went through pretty extensively all the potential locations and compared that with their forward-looking future plans with roadways and construction. And then we're able to identify some potential pilot sites And then they worked with some of our team members here to do a little bit more investigative H&H modeling to narrow down the sites. And they've been working with the local Lynn County Soil and Water Conservation District to partner with the county engineering office and do some surveying, and have landed on an area that they're going to pilot an on-road structure. So I think that's just one of the examples that we have been seeing counties use this for implementation. So it's great to see these collaborations come together from the different partnerships, and hopefully we'll start to see the construction maybe next year on that pilot project.
Great, thanks for the update on that. All right, I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I'll go ahead and let everyone go. Thank you again for attending the webinar. If you're interested in getting on the email list on future webinars, just shoot me an email and I can get you on that. We have these once a month and they highlight different water-related issues. And yeah, a recording of this will be on the Rain Campaign website shortly. And if you can't find it, just let me know and I'm happy to send you the link to the recording. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.